Hello, and welcome to day number 75, 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlin Nyback, and we're talking about Black issues, how Black life is expressed in America, how white privilege and entitlement is a factor in expressing anyone's life, and all the races and colors in between. I am inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. Before I get too far into his story, I want to tell you this project, it's upon hearing him, watching some of his videos, that inspired me to engage in this year-long project. In these 70 plus days that we've been gathering together, two important factors are starting to emerge as themes in my mind. First factor has two parts. First part is, does the slave mind of vulnerability, feeling deprived, oppressed, submissive to a fault, get passed down from generation to generation? Is it a prevailing condition that just perpetuates itself through history? And those are big philosophical questions. It'd be interesting to do some anthropological work on that. And on the flip side, does white entitlement move from generation to generation? That privilege, expectation of favor in the world get passed on as a type of mental, spiritual condition, a gene, through the minds of white folks. Then the second part is, do Black folks have enough financial literacy to make it and survive here in America? Do we understand banking? Do we understand how futile it is to work and save? It works pretty well if you can catch it early on. You can stave off some of the shortcomings of the employee mindset that America loves to promote, but do we understand inflation? Do we understand our dollar is not going to work as hard for us tomorrow as it did today? Because the government not the government, but a institution called the Federal Reserve just prints money. That's just about as worth as much as monopoly money. Are we understanding that? Do we get that? Now back to Dr. Claude Anderson. So he talks about these issues, talks about slavery, history, his experiences and whatnot. As soon as I started watching his videos, I was just engrossed, and I said, I'm going to dedicate a year to this man's work and do my best to inform my small niche. I've read 3 of his works. First work was A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. We reference these books heavily for this project, get this information, because I'm learning it right along with you. Part of the education process is to be able to kind of regurgitate. I'm getting that educational benefit by expressing it, and trying to articulate it back out into the universe. Black labor, white wealth, search for power and economic justice, and finally, Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower Black America, Powernomics, for communities, socializing. I'm not a big internet social guy, Facebook and tweets and stuff like that, but if you are, you go to #us too, #USTLO. Lots of Black women there discussing discoursing, discussing, talking about issues, probably more related to their femaleness. Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, is another place. It's kind of like a black Facebook, another forum there. And we've done some heavy lifting for the past 12, 13 days, I think. And so finally now we're going to get back to some story time here because we referenced this book. This is the fictional account of slave life in America, mid-1800s. Harriet Beecher Stowe's work, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Oh, I love that book. I'm almost finished it. But we check in because, through this year, we're just looking in. There's a lot of rooms. It's a big edifice that's gigantic. It has existed for hundreds of years. And so we look in to see black folks' lives. And so this fictional account of how all that works, it's good to check in there because I think she illustrates, while it's a fictional work, she does illustrate some real things that went on in the slave's life that we don't appreciate or talk about, issues that we could use as a rallying point to gather and empower black folks on our journey here. Excuse me, I'm a little stopped up here. But we're going to muddle through because we're going to grind. All right, day 75. Uncle Tom's Cabin. We're in chapter 7. A young slave, female named Eliza, has run away. She found out her little son Harry has been sold without her permission and all that. On her way out, she tells Tom what's going on, and so she's on her way. And now the story, chapter 7, picks up with getting oriented to Eliza's journey and what's going on. This is going to be a two-parter. Chapter 7 is pretty long, so we had to break it in two. We'll finish up later tomorrow. So back to Eliza. She's possessed with maternal strength, carrying her son. She's carrying her son, and he's struggling, and he insists that he could walk or run along with her and help him. She's just too close to the event, and every moment is about, getting every ounce of presence, interaction with her young son, and she refuses to put him down, so she runs out into the cool night along with him. In the beginning, right there near the beginning of the chapter, Harriet, she does this periodically through the book. She reaches out. The story is going on, but we come back to reality, and Harriet reaches out, so to speak, from the pages and makes an appeal to her white audience about their motherhood, about the matriarchs out there, and how they would respond if their young son was under the same kind of imminent pressure, danger, and the like. And the book is, much of it is, an abolitionist supporting issues. So every once in a while, whatever's going on, you'll see Harriet breaks in and makes an appeal to the audience. That this is before the major breakup of slavery. There is North and South issues like that, but so now she makes a brief appeal to white mothers. She's on. So back to Eliza. She's moving on. She's been moving fast. She's out of breath. But now daylight's breaking, and she's been on the main road actually. Interesting, there's no type of surveillance mentioned in the book anyway, but Eliza's more or less on the main road or near the main road, but daylight's breaking. The labor class is starting to move around on the road, and so she has to slow her pace, check her pace, and everything. Puts Harry down, of course, so she doesn't draw too much attention to herself. Eliza stops at an inn there next to the Ohio River. Is much of her journey. She needs to get to the other side now. It's just after winter, maybe early spring. So the Ohio River is actually swollen, and it has these large chunks of ice flows going through it. I've seen this kind of thing once in Pennsylvania, where the ice is breaking up on a river and moving down. It tears up everything. It swells the river, that waterway, and then you see the ice, big chunks of ice just moving along. So she's looking for a ferry to get across. Back at the Shelbys, they're still trying to get it together. Now it's dinner time. You know, it's been the morning. A man named Black Sam has done all kinds of running around and entertaining, and he sabotaged the whole thing. It's now dinner time. Now, Aunt Chloe, Tom's wife, makes dinner problematic, challenging. The gravy is spilled and it needs to be recooked. All water can't be poured right. You know the kind of thing. The slaves and servants are all in collusion here, pretending to work hard to get the meal served so people can get out and do the work. But it's nothing but disaster after disaster. Finally, the dinner does get served. Slaves are taking a break and they're starting to talk poorly about Master Shelby and whatnot, and start to speak ill. And as they do, Tom comes in. Now Tom, like, he's sincere, but you wonder how much of his sincerity is genuine, how much is conditioning, and it's going to be hard to find out. Maybe later on the book we'll get a better sense. But he does say, "Look, we dare not go down a negative road, a negative course against the master, because of we have a relationship with the Lord and Christ." And he quotes Matthew 5:44, "Pray for them that spitefully use you," and things like that. You remember Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and all those things. Those are well-worn passages in Tom's Bible. He doesn't read them all that well, but I can give it away. That's the New Testament is very well marked up in Tom's Bible, and he refers to some of those passages often. He says, it's challenging that I've been sold and whatnot, but I'm dare not going to descend into cynicism or bitterness over the situation. I'm going to take my lumps as Christ took his lumps here in the world, because there's a greater glory, there's rewards and whatnot. Unfortunately, that had to be a challenging place for the black slave in America, because these white guys were just absolute domination, and they used it. It wasn't two equal parties with a relationship with God moving together to you know, toward an end that was equitable for everyone. They used, the white establishment used the Word of God and Scripture as a tool to further condition the black man and woman, the black slave, to be that much more subservient. You know, we got you now, black person. Now we're showing you here in this God power institution here how much more so you need to be under us. And the black folks. This comes out later. Another little spoiler alert, but I won't be giving away too much out. See, the white mind in religion in the United States was like, they're the masters. When they die, they go to the sweet by and by wearing white and all that stuff, reigning with Christ in heaven and all that, you know. But the black folks, it's a whole different dynamic. It's about being oppressed, working hard, being burdened down. And when the black person dies, they get to have the privilege of participating with uh, with white folks. You see, where white folks is win-win. With black folks, it's lose and approach winning. You know, it's still, it's not an independent win for the black folks. It's still underneath white power, privilege, entitlement in heaven. It's interesting the way they set that up. I think black folks are pretty much broken away from that extreme, but that's a flavor of the dynamic that the white folks were using in those days. Tom's granted liberty in light of his impending departure. It says it's some interesting commentary about the nature of slavery back then. And I read Roots, and there were past systems, and if a woman was privileged, if a black woman was privileged enough to know where her child was sold, and she was quick enough, she could, after her day's labor, she could go and visit her child, her sold child, if the plantation wasn't too far off, and that information was available. Slaves could move at night with passes. Very, very dangerous, because if you run into some unscrupulous, uh, patrols, they could just scoop you up, silence you, and you'd be off, and then you'd be counted as a runaway, and you just gone. So those are some things to think about. So, but Tom, he's got integrity. He's above reproach here on the Shelby plantation. There, he's been there a while, and it's even in this chapter they talk about how Tom's been on this plantation long enough to have held Master Mr. Shelby in his arms. Tom has been inherited from Mr. Shelby's father, I think, is how the story puts it. That's how long Tom has been on the farm. He has served the Shelbys for a long time. So it's very surprising to the whole group, whole community, that Tom's been sold. You think you could be a fixture somewhere, but the slave is not safe anywhere at any time under any condition. So he's trusted he's got liberty for the day, and he's going to, it's up there with a death row, I guess, kind of. He's going to visit his family lament his situation, get his affairs in order as much as he can be packed. He's has the privilege of packing, taking some things with him, and off he goes. But first, this slave trader Haley is his name. He needs to go see if he can't hunt down this Eliza who's done taken little Harry, which is his Haley's real prize in the deal. And in the process, and all this lamentation and people trying to control their emotions and whatnot, Mrs. Shelby promises Tom. She encourages Tom that she'll try to redeem him. Even old Haley, the slave trader, tries to chime in and say, "Oh yeah, maybe after a while, I'll check in on him and I'll bring him back at some point." Lie, but they part of it, they don't want the slave to be freaking out and be too emotional in this transition. Anyway, same thing, same way you do on death row. You keep the prisoners calm. I watched The Green Mile, so you keep the prisoner calm at a low level. This impending doom is coming. So these words are bantered about in Tom's hearing. This. They're saying it partly for their own consciousness sake, and partly for Tom's keep Tom calm. So in all this goings on, old Black Sam enters. Not Sambo. We're going to talk about Sambo in a couple chapters later. But Black Sam, you remember, he was in there in the beginning, causing all kinds of trouble as they're trying to prepare to get on Eliza's trail. And he's done messed around and can't get stuff, get equipment and horses and assistants ready to get on this hunt. And all the slaves are in collusion, like I said, to delay this. They can't, they don't have the power to make the hunt go away, but they're delaying it. They're dragging their feet. They're spilling coffee and gravy and water and can't get the food out to the table and can't get the horses and the carriage ready and they're not sure, that's that's part of that conditioning of Black folks, that entertainment nerve that Black folks have. The will smile and entertain you, dance and sing, play instruments, make all you white folks happy, and maybe you'll make us rich. We'll carry a ball and do spectacular things and stuff. This is part of that, always entertaining, never being taken serious, But now in reality, the Black folks are being extremely clever about what's going on. It's very manipulative. It's manipulating from the rear, of the situation. You know what I mean? So finally, they're ready to get out on the road. Eliza's fortunate that there are no hunting dogs or hounds to track her down. There's an old Newfoundland that roams the property, but they're not tracking dogs. There's hound dogs, bloodhounds and stuff that'll track you down. So, but Mr. Shelby doesn't have any of that. Haley wishes he had, of course, so they can just put the dogs on the scent. Amazing use of that animal. That's awesome. I'm a dog person. I prefer cats, but I know how to handle dogs. So there's no dogs to get out there and get on the hunt. And so they've got to use some instinct and stuff. So old Black Sam, he's still playing stupid, and he says, they know they're going to, Eliza's headed for the river. Now Eliza took the road, the highway to get there. I don't know if Black Sam knows that or not. Anyway, he does insist. Well, I shouldn't say insist. He toys with an idea of taking a shortcut, which is a dirt road that's hardly used to get to the river versus the highway. And so he's talking out loud, and he's going around in circles around this. In the slave traders hearing, Black Sam is manipulating the road that they're going to take. Now, quick side note. In general, the education of these slave handlers and whatnot was not much above blacks, if above at all. Many of them were just as illiterate and whatnot as the common black slave of those days. And somewhere in Dr. Anderson's work, I read, how do men with barely a third grade education wield so much power? So that's part of Black Sam's he's got some advantage there, because Mr. Haley might not be all that smart. He just may be a man about money, smart about money, but academically he might not be fully on his toes. So it turns out Black Sam, through all these devices, has them going down the dirt road, and it's overgrown, rarely used, and whoops, don't you know it, it runs right into a heavily fenced-in property that there's no way around or through it, and they dare not mess up the property owner's fence. So now they got to go all the way back out of the woods to catch on the highway. All right, so that now they've doubled Eliza's escape time again. So let's see now. We're going to stop right there. We'll come back with part 2 tomorrow and see how all these things connected and how everybody's getting along. I'm Thomas Nyback. Thanks for hanging out with me again on that day 75. We'll see you tomorrow.